For many years, Yoda meditated and lived directly connected with the nature of the swampy planet. He slept in his hut, but lived off the fruits and the water that the planet provided. Yoda discovered more and more, and from some visions that the Force gave him, he was presented with something different that had been hidden on that planet for millennia. It was as if the guardian tree itself had told the Master what it guarded, and it was because of this that all the Force began to shake. Far from the little green master, Darth Vader was in his meditation chamber when he felt something unusual. It was like a flash, a powerful spark that arose in the emptiness of the Force. It was not just any presence. There was raw, intense energy, like that of a young person who still did not understand his potential. The detail that most disturbed Vader was where that presence came from. Tatooine, the sand planet that had marked his life forever. The memory brought anger and pain, but also a suspicion impossible to ignore. Something or someone had escaped the Emperor's control. Driven by distrust, Vader dove into the Imperial archives, reviewing old reports. He found mentions of a farm belonging to a certain Owen Lars, a name that reminded him of his buried past. Kenobi also appeared in indirect records. Merchants reported a mysterious Ben, living as a hermit near that region. Vader cross-checked data on supplies, suspicious transactions, and discreet movements. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Someone had protected and hidden something important on Tatooine, and where Kenobi was, Jedi secrets certainly remained. The sensation of the boy grew in Vader's mind. He could not identify details, but it was clear that this was no ordinary civilian. It was as if the Force tried to call him, revealing that there was more than dust and farms under the twin suns. The Sith's instinct screamed. That boy was both a threat and an opportunity. Still, there was another presence, an ancient shadow, different from Kenobi but equally powerful, arose when he deepened his connection. Vader knew he could not ignore it. It was then that Dagobah appeared in his visions during other meditations. The swampy planet, lost in maps, pulsed like a beacon in the Force. Vader knew that there was nothing official there, but his intuition pushed him in that direction. When he reported to the Emperor about his investigation on Tatooine, Palpatine ordered him to return immediately to supervise the fleet. Vader, however, lied. In silence, he hid his intentions and left alone in a small ship, without escort, without records, determined to follow the trail to the end. Before passing through Tatooine, he would need to go to where that other Force seemed to call him. It was almost as if it were an invitation, as if it were something completely planned. The suffocating atmosphere of the swampy planet received him like a living prison. Sensors failed, compasses went crazy, but Vader advanced, guided only by the Force. The twisted trees and dense fog formed a natural labyrinth, muffled and hostile. Still, he did not hesitate. He walked with his red saber lit, illuminating the swamp like a flame in the darkness, until, in the almost absolute silence, he found what he was looking for. The serene gaze of a Jedi Master he believed to be dead. Yoda. The small being looked at him without fear. "I was already expecting you," Yoda said with the calm of someone who no longer needed to hide. Vader responded only by activating the power of the Force, trying to crush the Master with pure violence. Thus, the confrontation began. Vader's first attack was a diagonal saber strike, quick and heavy. Yoda escaped by leaping with incredible agility, dodging as if he were part of the swamp. The first offensive had failed. In the second move, Vader launched his saber in rotation, trying to cut the Master from a distance. Yoda, however, used the Force to redirect the blade, which whizzed past him and returned to the Sith's hands. Something was very different about the little green Master, and Vader became very curious about it. He thought of another way to attack and discover Yoda's mystery, and in response, Vader gathered debris and mud, hurling them in a storm against the old Jedi. That was the third move. Yoda, astute, took advantage of the spaces between attacks and leapt, striking Vader's armor knee with a quick cut. The metallic sound revealed serious damage. Furious, Vader tore up a tree with the Force and threw it like a spear. Yoda countered with 3 quick cuts, splitting the trunk in the air and sending the halves back against the enemy. The impact hit Vader, who hesitated for a second upon seeing that the master was strangely as fast and clever as a decade ago, burying him partially in the mud. In the fifth move, Vader counterattacked up close, striking with brute force, lightsaber against lightsaber, trying to crush the master with a sequence of powerful blows. But Yoda, with astonishing mastery, dodged and counterattacked, scoring Vader's respirator and damaging his system. The sixth and final move was desperate. Vader was still trying to understand the secret of the little master's strength and agility, but without success, so he concentrated hatred and power into a single blow, creating a wave of energy that devastated the swamp around him. Yoda braced himself in the living roots, absorbing the force from the environment, and returned the impact as a cold and precise shock. Vader was hurled against the rocks, momentarily losing the saber. When he raised his head, the green blade was just inches from his helmet. If Yoda wanted, it could have ended right there. But Yoda hesitated, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. He knew that killing Vader would not change the greater destiny of the galaxy, only accelerate Palpatine's wrath. So he stepped back and declared, "Today, live you must. Your story, through the Force, still needs to be told." Vader, taking advantage of the Master's mercy, fled limping, with the respirator failing and the suit sparking. He climbed into his ship and left in a hurry, leaving the planet and the little Master behind, but not the mark of defeat. The Jedi Master remained still, watching the ship disappear into the clouds. Though wounded, Vader would survive, and that meant the danger would grow even faster. Yoda then made a decision he had avoided for almost 20 years. The time for hiding was over. The galaxy needed something that only he and Kenobi together could offer, preparing the boy from Tatooine to face the future. And more than that, Yoda thought that now that he was capable of defeating Vader, perhaps the former Jedi might regain his conscience and abandon the Empire. But above all, Yoda let Vader escape to send a message to the Emperor. A message about the Master who had risen again. Entering his hut, Yoda gathered only the essentials. The swamp had been his home and his prison, but now it was time to leave. He connected to the Force and felt the thread of destiny that led him directly to Luke Skywalker. The boy shone in the desert like a flame, protected but still vulnerable. Yoda knew he could not waste time. Soon, he would meet Kenobi on Tatooine to begin the training. Vader, defeated but alive, carried within him the fury of almost having been overcome, but also carried a bit of curiosity. That Master Yoda he saw seemed to be at his peak. Or rather, he seemed to still have potential to grow, so Vader needed to discover what had happened. So he waited. Yoda did not leave immediately. Before leaving the planet, he returned to a place even deeper in the Force, an ancient point of concentration, hidden under centuries of mist and roots, but one that only he, over millennia, had ever found. The truth is that he had not come to this jungle planet by coincidence. He knew of ancient stories that only someone who had crossed through eras could know. For years he meditated in damp caves, branches covered in moss, winding rocks, and everything else on that planet that was deeply connected to the Force. It was decades of slow breathing until the Force led him to a clear vision. A colossal tree, so immense it could be seen from space. It was during his first visit to it that there was such a drastic change in the Force that everything shifted, and now the Master was going there once again. The tree was a colossus. Its roots were the size of entire buildings on Coruscant, raised in twisting pillars that sustained the lives of thousands of creatures. Some were as wide as avenues, others hollow like caverns. Between the living trunks, dark rivers flowed, fed by the very sap. The smell was dense, a mixture of ancient wood and mystery. No human being could climb such a wonder without madness or preparation. But for Yoda it was a path, not an obstacle, and he was patient enough to make use of the entire journey. As he crossed the first route, he found rare creatures. Luminous insects the size of fists, amphibians that sang like bells, and golden-eyed felines that watched from a distance. Higher up, trunks twisted like walls, hiding natural passages that resembled temples. Each curve revealed the bones of forgotten peoples who had tried to reach the top in past eras. But Yoda continued in silence, for he already knew the way. It was as if every step were part of a ritual. The climb lasted days. Among roots and branches, Yoda rested on natural platforms where the wind sounded like ancient voices. On the third day, he reached the center of the tree, where an open clearing resembled a beating heart. There, very ancient peoples had carved a stone door, covered in symbols that even he did not recognize. The entrance seemed to invite and repel at the same time. Yoda remained before it, feeling that something inside was calling him, something that spanned generations of mystery. The interior was vast, a circular chamber where the very wood-formed walls that seemed like living breaths. The floor was covered in carved marks, engraved in spirals that led to the center. There, an object rested, wrapped in energy. Yoda did not dare to awaken the whole secret. He only extended his small hand and took something simple, something so discreet it fit into a small cloth pouch. His eyes shone with mystery and, without a word, he left the place. The rest of the revelation would remain for the future. Placing the pouch inside his robes, Yoda finally departed. His small ship crossed the silent space until it reached the scorching desert of Tatooine. There he let the Force guide him to the one he was seeking and found Obi-Wan in secret, near old caves once used by hermits. The reunion between the two was filled with respect and nostalgia. Obi-Wan looked at him in surprise. Yoda seemed different, less hunched, more alive, as if he had regained part of his vitality. The old master, who had once seemed weary, now radiated renewed energy. To Yoda, Obi-Wan, or rather Ben Kenobi as he was known on that planet, looked much older than in the memories of the Jedi's fall. They spent hours talking. Yoda recounted how he had faced Vader, how he had almost defeated him, and how he had chosen to spare his life. He told him about the giant tree and the strange artifact he now carried against his chest. Obi-Wan listened with serious eyes, but also noticed something that could not be explained. A strange reverberation in the Force. It was as if invisible waves echoed through the universe since the confrontation. "I felt something as well," Kenobi confessed. Yoda nodded. "Soon I will reveal, but first train the boy we must." The greater revelation would come later. Destiny could not wait. Thus Yoda asked to meet Luke Skywalker. Obi-Wan took him to the dunes, where the young man worked quietly, caring for parts and vaporators. When Luke saw Ben accompanied by a small and exotic figure, he was confused. Kenobi explained, "I have always been a Jedi, Luke. I have always been here to protect you. And this is Yoda, the master who asked me to find you." The boy froze. His simple life had never prepared him for something like this. After breaking the ice, Yoda spoke little but firmly. He said that Luke had within him something greater than he imagined. The training, however, would not be easy. The approach would be dual. Obi-Wan would take care of the lightsaber, martial discipline, and Jedi strategy. Yoda would focus on the Force, meditation, and inner balance. The boy, still an adolescent, accepted without fear, but with a spark of curiosity and hope. The future was beginning to change right there, in the burning sands of the desert. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the galaxy, Vader knelt before Palpatine. The throne room was immersed in shadows, illuminated only by the flashes of lightning that crossed deep space. Vader recounted the confrontation. He admitted he had failed to destroy Yoda and that the Master still lived. His voice, though firm, carried the pain of injury and defeat. The Emperor remained silent for long seconds before exploding in fury. Palpatine rose, his hunched figure gleaming with dark power. "A little master survived, and you failed to finish him." Vader endured the weight of the wrath, bowed. The Emperor paced in circles, imagining the risk Yoda represented if he united forces with other Jedi. Vader replied that Yoda was different, stronger than he expected. This only heightened the Sith Lord's unease. "We cannot allow him to train another. A new Jedi must not be born." Yes, I too felt all that reverberation in the Force. I know that there is another about to emerge. In fact, I have already sent extermination agents to take care of it. The atmosphere was heavy. Palpatine looked toward the horizon, the stars reflecting in his evil eyes. "If Yoda has returned, it is because the Force conspires against us. We must crush the spark before it becomes flame. Vader remained kneeling, but his mind burned in silence. If it was on that planet that the little master found his return, then I have a slight idea of what happened. Vader, I have a mission for you. The attack came even before Luke's training could begin. In the dead of night, a squad of Imperial droids advanced stealthily against the Lars farm. The machines were fast, silent, and the sensors installed by Owen detected nothing until it was too late. However, the force reverberated with intensity, and both Yoda and Obi-Wan awoke almost at the same time. Within seconds, they were on their feet, sabers lit, running to the barn. What they saw was terrifying. Not only droids, but 5 Inquisitors, sent by Palpatine himself, marching through the sand lit by the twin moons. These Inquisitors were different. The first, Rocker, was a scarlet-skinned Trandoshan who carried a serrated blade saber and used chemical fire grenades. The second, Nisara, a shadowy Twi'lek, mastered illusions and could confuse the senses of her opponents. The third, Vornak, was a Zabrak with colossal muscles, who wielded 2 short blades and had metallic implants. The fourth, Driel, was a Devaronian with yellow eyes, with abilities to absorb force electrical discharges. Lastly, there was Kaler, a hybrid human of unknown race, who used hidden bombs and had a special talent for psychological torture. The battle began explosively. Droids fired volleys of blasters, which Obi-Wan and Yoda deflected in arcs of light. Farms burned, vaporators exploded in flames, and the air filled with dust and fire. Luke tried to help, but was pushed inside the house by Owen and Beru. Yoda advanced in leaps, toppling droids with short, precise strikes, while Kenobi protected the Lars family, spinning his blue saber to create a shield of light. But the Inquisitors played dirty. Bombs were thrown against the walls, and Nisara projected false images of dead clones to distract the Masters. The most critical moment came when Kaler stormed into the house and seized Beru as a hostage, placing a blade to her neck. Luke shouted in rage, feeling a fury that almost made him lose control. Kenobi sensed the darkness trying to seduce the boy and called him back to reason. Luke, no. Anger leads to the same path that destroyed your father. The cry echoed in the midst of battle, while droids exploded all around. Still, the danger grew with every moment. Yoda noticed that Kenobi, older and weary, was starting to lose his rhythm. His strikes were still precise, but slow against 5 such aggressive enemies. The Master decided to make a risky decision. Them, I will handle alone. Leaping into the center, Yoda faced the 5 Inquisitors, dodging attacks that came from all sides. The enemies laughed and mocked, trying to crush the small Master, but the Force guided him with movements impossible to predict. Even so, Yoda felt that Obi-Wan would not be able to protect everyone for much longer. It was then that Yoda pulled from his robes the small cloth pouch he had taken from the World Tree and threw it to his old friend. Now, begin you must. Kenobi quickly opened it and found only a seed, something resembling a dark bean. Without understanding, he heard the firm command, eat. Trusting without hesitation, Obi-Wan swallowed the strange seed. Seconds later, a bomb thrown by Vornak exploded right in front of him, hurling him against the walls of the farm. Everyone thought he had died, but the impossible happened. Obi-Wan rose. His body was burned, but not destroyed. The Force had instinctively contained the explosion, and something else was happening. His skin looked younger, his hair darker, his posture straighter. The Jedi was rejuvenated, as if he had returned to the height of his power during the Clone Wars. Luke and the others looked on in disbelief, while Obi-Wan, still stunned, felt energy running through his veins in a way he hadn't felt in decades. I don't know what this is, but I will use it. The counterattack was brutal. Obi-Wan, now at the peak of his strength, charged against the Inquisitors with speed and power they did not expect. The blue saber danced, cutting down droids, deflecting explosions, striking with precision. Driel fell first, struck down by a cut that disarmed his electrical discharge. Then Rocker was taken down with a precise combination of attack and force push when Master Kenobi joined Yoda and both attacked from the flanks. Nisara tried to cast illusions, but Yoda dissolved them, allowing him to finish her with a precise strike of the green saber. One by one, the enemies fell. Only Kaler remained, who released Beru and tried to flee, but was caught by Kenobi, who brought him down with a circular saber strike. The battle ended with smoke, droid corpses scattered, and charred sand. Yoda approached Obi-Wan and, with that air of wisdom, simply said, "A little secret from the tree. This was discovered in my wanderings. But now flee we must. Take the boy and the family to greater safety." Obi-Wan nodded, still surprised at his new vigor. Luke looked at the two masters with a mixture of admiration and fear, not knowing if he was ready for all of this. The training began immediately after the escape. Yoda took on the spiritual part. He taught Luke to meditate, to control his breathing, to empty his mind and feel the flow of the Force like a constant river. He challenged him with harsh words, always reminding him that fear was the first enemy. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering, he repeated firmly, making Luke confront his own inner reflection. It was painful but necessary. Obi-Wan, now renewed, took on the physical part. He trained Luke with an improvised lightsaber, teaching posture, defense, counterattack, and reading movements. In each duel, the boy fell, but rose again, until he learned to anticipate strikes. Kenobi also taught Jedi tactics, how to move unseen, how to use the environment to his advantage. Luke began to realize that it wasn't just strength, but strategy, discipline, and faith. Seeing Obi-Wan younger and stronger also inspired him. They trained and fled for 2 years, and, in a ritual at sunset, Yoda and Obi-Wan together sealed Luke's connection to the Force. They created a circle of stones, where the young man knelt. Uniting their powers, they channeled energy until Luke felt his body vibrate. For an instant, he saw the future. Battles, friends and enemies, stars exploding, and the fate of the galaxy in his hands. When he opened his eyes, he was breathless, but different. Latent abilities had awakened. Now, he had precognition and energy control beyond what any other Jedi would have learned at his age. Time passed amidst training and escapes. Luke learned faster and faster, and the best lessons came from real battles. Alongside Yoda and Obi-Wan, he faced Imperial detachments, ambushes, and patrols on distant worlds. Each confrontation was a lesson. Luke grew strong, confident, but also aware of the responsibility he carried. The Masters watched with pride, but also with caution, for they knew that the path of the Force could still divert him if not firmly guided. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the galaxy, the Empire moved. The main ship, under Palpatine's orders, advanced on a mysterious planet. Rays of energy destroyed entire cities, generating flashes visible from space. The target was not unique or secret. It was always someplace with direct connection between the protagonists. It was clear this was a provocation, and that if they did not appear, Dagobah would be next. The Imperial fury made it clear that this was not an ordinary attack. Vader himself observed from the deck, silent, feeding on the destruction as fuel for his plans. Something big was coming. Luke, however, did not know. He continued growing, maturing in the fire of war, becoming not just an apprentice, but a future symbol. Every strike, every fall, every lesson from the Masters brought him closer to his destiny. The boy who once only dreamed of adventures in the desert was now becoming a central piece in a game that would define the future of the galaxy. The warning came like a silent thunder inside Yoda's mind. While Luke trained and Obi-Wan watched him, the Master suddenly stopped, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. He felt an ancient pain, as if the very soil were screaming. The swampy planet was being attacked, burned, crushed under the weight of Imperial ships. He opened his eyes and spoke gravely. "There, destroying they are. The tree, they seek. Defend, I must." Luke and Kenobi looked at each other, already understanding that the call could not be ignored. They departed immediately. The journey was long, but when the ship entered the misty atmosphere, they encountered no resistance. On the contrary, the clouds opened, and an illuminated clearing formed almost like a walkway of wind and light. Dozens of Imperial ships were there, but none attacked them. The trio advanced in silence, their feet striking against giant roots that now seemed to tremble with each step. The air was heavy, but there was no combat at all, only a summons. They were expected. Yoda understood the reason when he saw it from afar. The burned roots all led to the same point, the great tree, the heart of the planet, the very place where he had found the small secret he had given to Kenobi. The Imperial forces were not destroying by chance. They were searching there. The destruction was only the path to open the way to the center, where something ancient rested. Yoda stopped before the trunk and felt the force vibrating in waves. They were not alone. In the center of the clearing, the scene awaited them. The Emperor, motionless, wrapped in his dark cloak, waited in silence. At his side, towering like a shadow, stood Darth Vader. The air flickered between Force lightning and the distant roar of Imperial engines orbiting above. Obi-Wan and Yoda advanced calmly, but Luke, overtaken by the impulsiveness of youth, could not endure it. He shouted in rage and ran ahead, blue saber lit, trying to strike Vader without waiting for his companions. The duel exploded on two fronts. Luke and Obi-Wan against Vader, Yoda against Palpatine. Vader easily blocked Luke's initial strike, throwing him back with the Force. Obi-Wan moved quickly, slashing diagonally. Vader dodged and countered, but Luke returned with a bold move, nearly striking the side of the black armor. Vader laughed coldly, but he felt the fight would be hard. Darth Vader was also shocked to see Obi-Wan's appearance so different. "My old master, it seems you've been playing dirty. How did you regain your youth?" But the conversation ended quickly when Vader grabbed Luke by the neck with the Force and would have finished him if Kenobi had not been fast enough. Meanwhile, Yoda faced Palpatine in a clash of pure power. The first move was the Emperor unleashing lightning that lit up the entire clearing. Yoda absorbed them with his saber and redirected them to the ground, making the roots explode in sparks. The second move was Yoda leaping over Palpatine, trying to cut off his head, but the Sith dodged with unexpected agility, counterattacking with a wave that threw the Master against the trunk. In the third move, Yoda focused the Force and pulled a root to serve as a shield against new lightning. Palpatine, in response, raised a column of energy that shattered the shield into fragments. The fourth move was Yoda advancing at speed, spinning the green saber in small cuts, forcing Palpatine to retreat. The fifth and final came when Yoda finally rose in the center of the clearing, closed his eyes, and drew the very tree to him. Giant branches and roots responded to the call, coiling like serpents and crushing the Emperor's body with a dull crack, silencing his laughter forever. On the other front, Vader dueled fiercely. First, he blocked Luke and pushed Obi-Wan back with the Force, nearly toppling him. Second, he hurled debris at Luke, who dodged with newly trained reflexes. Third, rejuvenated Obi-Wan counterattacked with swift strikes, recalling the old days of the Jedi Order. The fourth move was Vader striking in rage, forcing Kenobi to his knees, but Luke leapt and struck his father's saber from above, nearly breaking his guard. The fifth and decisive came when Luke, guided by the Force, spun his blade and struck the side of Vader's helmet, throwing him to the ground. The metallic sound echoed like the end of a cycle. The field fell silent. Palpatine crushed by the roots, Vader defeated by his own son, and the three Jedi, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Luke, standing, surrounded. In the sky, now hundreds of Imperial ships emerged in formation, blocking any escape. It was the vision of an impossible siege. But instead of fear, they felt something different. The planet, the tree, the roots, all vibrated with energy. The Force flowed in waves, permeating every cell of their bodies. Luke took a deep breath and said, "We are not alone." Obi-Wan smiled, raising his saber, confident. Yoda closed his eyes and merely murmured, "Hope never dies." The light of the tree illuminated the misty sky, like a beacon in the midst of the Empire's darkness. And in that instant, even surrounded by the entire enemy fleet, the three felt that the battle for the galaxy was only just beginning.